Hi, I'm Janine Cohen, a producer at Australian Story. Tonight we continue the story of two families whose lives were devastated by the murder of Noongar woman Stacey Thorne. Scott Austic was convicted of the crime and spent 12 years in jail before being acquitted in a retrial which revealed shocking accounts of planted evidence. More than a year later, police have not reopened the case despite calls from both families. This has caused great heartache for the Thornes, who say there's been no justice for Stacey. And a warning to our Indigenous viewers, this episode contains images of someone who has died.
35-year-old Stacey Thorne was found murdered outside a neighbour's house on Sunday night. She was more than 3 months pregnant.
It was a brutal murder. Stacey was stabbed 21 times in what seems to be quite a frenzied attack.
Losing your sister, baby sister of all people. I just laid on the couch and cried and cried.
Stacey was an easygoing person, you know.
She was an Aboriginal relation officer at the school.
I'd been seeing Stacey for about 18 months. I went to her place that night. We'd had sex, had a little chat again, and then I'd gone home.
The police quickly focused on Scott as a suspect because he'd sent her a phone message saying, "Please, Stacey, I'd do anything for you not to have the baby."
Detectives arrested Mr Austic, a local mine worker, early this morning.
When they told me they arrested me, I said, well, you're making a mistake.
The prosecution case was a very strong one.
Police found the first piece of crucial evidence, the Jim Beam can, outside of Stacey's house that had Scott's DNA and fingerprints on it. Detectives found the alleged murder weapon. It was found to contain Stacey's blood on that knife.
On the prosecution case, he left his cigarettes on a table on the back porch. There was blood on the cigarette pack, which was her blood.
According to the police, after murdering Stacey Thorne, Scott returned to his house, lit up a cigarette, and thereby put some of Stacey's blood onto the cigarette packet.
Today, Scott Austic was sentenced to life with a 25-year minimum for willful murder.
And when they said guilty, we got our justice. We thought that was finished.
So my nan never gave up. Dad said he didn't do it and she refused to, believe that he did.
I said, I'll look at this forensically and I'll give you my honest opinion.
Clint Hampson discovered when he went through the search video that the cigarette pack was not on that table.
And this is the time, 6:31 p.m, Friday the 14th. Can you see the video, the 13th? This is the table in question at the back here. Where's that cigarette packet? It's not there. It shouldn't be there, Robert.
I know.
I was extremely shocked, and that immediately put me on alert as to what else might have been going on. The paddock area between Stacey and Scott's house was searched by SES personnel. They didn't find a knife. The following day, detectives find a blood-stained knife.
How the hell do you miss that if you're doing a line search?
We said to ourselves, bullshit.
Opened out, the blade was 10 centimetres long.
The 4 fatal wounds were up to 15 centimetres in length.
This was a deliberate attempt to try and skew the evidence. But of course it was flawed, because they didn't know that the knife had to be 15 centimetres long in order to achieve what they were trying to do.
When I agreed to look at this case, I had no idea that it would take 10 years to get a resolution. At the time, I wasn't a lawyer, and I was looking at the case purely from a forensic perspective.
The starting point of the investigation was Clint Hampson identifying major irregularities in relation to the cigarette packet and the alleged murder weapon, the knife. He then moved on to the Jim Beam can and found similar irregularities in relation to that exhibit as well.
Detectives found the Jim Beam can outside Stacey's house. It had Scott Austic's DNA and fingerprints on the can.
The police claimed that that was proof that Scott Austic returned to Stacey's house later that night to murder her.
This Jim Beam cam was found by detectives on the Tuesday morning at 7 o'clock. That verge area had been searched the night before by no less than 5 officers of the WA Police, some of who were forensic officers. They conducted a thorough search of the verge and none of them identified or located a Jim Beam cam.
Clint Hampson also studied the T-shirt that Scott Austic was wearing on the night of the killing, which was captured on the CCTV at the Boddington Hotel.
The state's case was that after killing Stacey, he had blood deposited on his shirt, and then in order to dispose or destroy that evidence, he's then burnt that in the fireplace. A forensic examination of that fireplace found some small fabric remains with the words Matilda Bay Brewing, and it was identified that that particular wording and logo must have come from a Redback beer shirt.
Clint Hampson analysed the remains of the T-shirt and the image captured on the CCTV footage and found that they did not match.
The Redback beer shirt, by its very name, has a red sash, and the footage in the Boddington Hotel shows the shirt he's wearing with a white logo, and it doesn't have any red on it whatsoever. Also, the evidence given by his roommates was that when police came to the house that morning, so this was just hours after Stacey was killed, they didn't notice any smell of a fire being recently lit.
Yeah, it would have been noticeable if there had been a fire burning, I would have thought, yeah, especially that late in the year, being summer. We would have smelt something if anything had been burning.
Scott Austic's roommate gave evidence at trial when he said that often they would use old shirts, they'd rip them up and use them as rags to start fires.
We'd had a bottle of diesel there and we'd dip a rag into some diesel, use that to start the fire. That, to me, would explain why there would be any fabric in there.
Also, I think the police had a misconceived view that Scott Austic was lying about the clothing that he was wearing that night.
When Scott did his first interview with the police, he was severely hungover. It was quite early in the morning. The clothes that he said that he was wearing the night before, when they went back through camera footage at the Boddington Hotel, they found that he was wearing different clothes than what he said.
I don't think it was a deliberate lie. I think it was just his memory failing and the fact that he was intoxicated and he didn't actually recall changing before going to the pub.
Them clothes that I was wearing at the hotel, I'm sure they would have been in my room, but I was never allowed to go back to my house.
Now, the 10th, the Monday, the last exhibit taken was this one.
I approached Malcolm McCusker, who's one of the eminent QCs in WA and around the country, and is our former governor. Malcolm McCusker is very well respected, and we presented the material to him.
So the theory is he's gone back.
That's the Crown case. He went back and he murdered her. Right?
And I think it's fair to say that Malcolm was quite shocked about what we presented to him, in particular the fact that the cigarette packet mysteriously appears following the forensic investigation.
Yeah,
there's nothing there.
There's nothing there, no. It's clear as day.
Clear.
And that was, no doubt, produced as an exhibit.
But nobody picked it up. Nobody picked this up at all.
Basically, it was his pack of cigarettes.
His pack of cigarettes got her blood, bingo.
So he's come home.
Well, that's game, set and match, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can see why the jury convicted him.
Of course you can.
But all this has been mixed.
All this has been there.
Yeah.
This was, I guess, worse. This is...
I can't get much worse, surely.
I've practiced law now for over 60 years. And this case of Scott Austic is certainly one of the most extreme cases of miscarriage of justice that I've seen.
Okay, now you've got fresh evidence. There is undisputedly fresh evidence. It seems to me that it's so cogent.
I agreed to take on the task of drafting a petition for the Attorney-General to refer the case of Austic back to the Court of Appeal.
It was a very high-powered team. The momentum was just enormous. They had huge supporters, and the media then got hold of that. So for 2 years prior to the appeal going ahead, they kept promoting these elements of doubt.
When we first heard about it, reading in the paper, they keep on saying that he didn't do it. He didn't do it. Then we keep on hearing it, that he wants to appeal, wants to appeal. It's just horrible. Then we've got to go through all of this again.
Scott's appeal for clemency was granted by the Attorney-General, and Scott's case went before the Court of Criminal Appeal in 2019.
Our case was always based on the fact that evidence was planted, but as to who, we just don't know exactly who.
Scott Austic has always maintained his innocence, and now a new appeal is examining claims police planted evidence against him. That evidence included a blood-stained cigarette packet. The detective who found the packet unreservedly denied planting it himself or knowing that someone else had done so.
The police, they don't even know Scott. Why would they frame him too? And plant evidence they reckon they did their job. They've done it right.
I can say that I have never in my professional life experienced a judgment or a court making a finding of that nature before.
Well, I think the finding that evidence was planted is concerning. When I was Police Commissioner, I certainly received no information that there was any tampering of evidence, there was any moving of evidence. That was something that emerged in the appeals court after my time. It sounds like there's a lot that's gone on that is unexplained in the Scott Austic case, and I think we need some sort of explanation about what occurred there.
WA's highest court has quashed the conviction of a man who was serving a life sentence for the murder of his pregnant girlfriend and ordered that he face a new trial.
One of the reasons that the Court of Criminal Appeal decided that there should be a retrial, even though they said that there was credible, cogent and plausible evidence of tampering, was that there was still the notion that he might still have done the killing.
The Court of Appeal still felt that a jury could find Scott guilty of murder based on the remaining evidence. There was a motive. Stacey was pregnant with his child. He had previously sent her a text message saying that he would do anything for her to get rid of it. There was a Jim Beam can with Scott's DNA that was found outside Stacey's home. Scott lied to police about the clothes that he was wearing on that night, and in his wood fire heater there were remnants of clothing, burnt clothing, that was found. And that's why they chose to go to retrial rather than acquitting him there and then.
A Boddington man whose original murder conviction was quashed is on trial again, accused of fatally stabbing his pregnant girlfriend 13 years ago.
Scott's retrial was held in November 2020, and the defence argued strenuously that evidence had been planted.
What makes this case extraordinary is that it's a very difficult thing to stand up in front of a jury and effectively make very, very serious allegations against police and effectively accuse them of corruption. And that was the case that we had to present to the jury on this retrial.
Not only that, under strong cross-examination, they showed there was a time alibi for Scott.
So at the retrial, the timings of who heard and who saw what that night became critically important, and unfortunately at the first trial, those issues weren't properly explored, and it wasn't identified that Scott couldn't have been the killer because he was in fact at home when Stacey was stabbed. What we do know is from Stacey's neighbours who first heard her crying after she'd been stabbed is that she must have been stabbed around about 10:20 or 10:30 at the latest. Stacey's neighbours hear some moaning, which we know was Stacey. Their dogs bark as a result of Stacey coming out to the front of the yard. So we have a timeline in that respect. But back at Scott's house, we know that his two roommates were home with him.
I probably got home about 9:30. Scott arrived home probably 15 to 20 minutes after I did. Joined Kempy and I in the lounge watching the movie.
Yeah, we watched the movie for, I don't know, it could have been 15 minutes, half an hour. Then had a bit of a chat with Scotty outside before I went to bed.
Based on the evidence given by his roommates at the retrial, we know that Scott had gone to bed just maybe after 10:30, closer to 11 o'clock.
The significance of all of that is that on that time frame, Scott Austic, as was argued to the jury, could not have had the opportunity to kill Stacey Thorne because on the evidence he was still at the house when she was killed.
A man who claimed he was framed for a murder 13 years ago has been found not guilty of the crime in a retrial in the Supreme Court.
At the retrial, the jury took 2 hours to acquit him.
Oh, it was really nerve-wracking. Just sitting there saying, oh, please say not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. That's all you could say. And it was just, oh.
When jury returned their verdict of not guilty, that is one emotional experience that is hard to explain into words. I could feel tears running down my face, just waiting for that. Those 2 words of not guilty.
We got the biggest shock of our lives when they said, not guilty.
Couldn't even walk. The girls had to help me out of the room.
Members of Stacey Thorne's family stormed angrily out of the court. They said outside that after 13 years they're still waiting for justice.
It hurts. If you see him walking out this courthouse, it's going to kill us, you know? Back when it first happened, it killed us, nearly. It killed my parents.
I went to the court and met the Thorne family, whom I'm also related to, and I was really shocked when the acquittal came in. I believe this was a racist legal outcome of an all-white jury. If Stacey had been a white woman, a pregnant white woman, there's no way that an Aboriginal man would have been acquitted.
Based on all the evidence at the first trial, when the jury said guilty, I still believe that he is guilty.
There are some critics out there who say that even if some of these key pieces of evidence were planted, then that doesn't necessarily mean that Scott was innocent. To that I say, you need to look at the case as a whole. The timing does not fit. The forensic evidence, if you take away what was planted, and you take away some of the concerning aspects of the investigation, then there is nothing left to suggest that Scott Austic was the killer.
Scott's case is a serious miscarriage of justice, and he has lost a lot. For Scott coming out of prison at 46 and having to live with his mum, he only has a small room here, and he just says, that's okay, Mum, you know, but he has lost the independence that he did have. He'll never ever be able to be the same person.
I'm working as a trades assistant in the mining industry, and I'm studying a university degree of health science part-time. And yeah, I'd like to seek some compensation so I can start my life again.
Hello? Scott realises that he's probably going to have to still live with being called a murderer or whatever.
Yeah, so...
Some people's beliefs you'll never be able to change. All that matters is as long as I'm happy doing what I need to do, spend my life with my family, people can think what they want.
So it's just really horrible to know that Stacey's family, they still think Dad did it, I guess, but at the end of the day, they've had no justice for what's happened.
Oh, my go.
Yeah.
It's our baby sister that was hurt. We were very, very close family. Wherever we went, we was always together. I miss talking to her and knocking at my door, asking if I wanted to go for a walk downtown. It's just them little things that hit you. The last court case, yeah, we just come home and we was lost.
Stacey's family, they have no answers, they have no justice. Somebody needs to do something to help them because the police have more or less closed the case and there's no further investigation. And the problem is too, I mean, the wounds keep getting reopened, don't they?
I knew I had to do something, so I got in contact with a private investigator, Robin Cotman. I just couldn't sit down and do nothing.
I got a call from Stacey's sister Hayley asking me if I could help them get answers.
Try and get, justice for her.
Exactly. And whether that, whether we can make that happen or not, I don't know, but at least we're going to give it a damn good try. I am a former serving police officer. I served for 8-9 years. I was trained in intelligence and also undercover work. I only really became aware of the whole case mid-2020, and purely because one of the lead investigators in the case is a colleague of mine now, as a private investigator, and we both work together on some cases.
Because you are colleagues, do you feel that you can look at this case fairly and objectively, given that you have a connection to him?
Yes, I do, because I'm basically engaged by the client. The client is Stacey's family. I don't have alliances or allegiances with anybody in particular, whether it be, the defence, the prosecution, the police, my colleagues. I'm just there to look at things objectively. No, that's great. Certainly makes sense. Thank you for that. All right, thanks. See ya. He was just explaining to me where the knife was found and where the SES search, what path they took.
There should be an investigation, but it should be an independent investigation at arm's length, completely removed from anybody associated with this team.
I've got to question every aspect of it. And that even means questioning the appeal court decisions. It means questioning, what evidence the defence is putting forth or the prosecution's putting forth. I've got to question everything to try and find those missing pieces. The defence produced this photo as the one that they say the evidence was planted, the cigarette packet was planted. The photographs that the defence show, I'm questioning the fact that in the first photograph, you cannot definitively say that there was no cigarette packet on that table all the time, because the photograph of the table does not show you all angles or sides and every item that is on that table. So could that be the cigarette packet and we just can't see it from that angle?
The argument advanced by the private investigator is the same argument that was put to the jury by the prosecutor on behalf of the police, namely the notion that just maybe the forensic investigators who spent 1.5 days going through that house before the homicide squad were permitted to enter it simply missed it. We dealt with that comprehensively, and in my view there is no possibility for that to have happened, and indeed the jury must have rejected that notion by reference to the not guilty verdict.
I've always believed in the police. We need the police. I'll teach my kids to go to the police and do things, but myself, I never ever trust them again. Ever.
I don't think there's a systemic problem with the WA police at all, but I would like to see more accountability in cases like this. Scott Austic is not the first. There have been others before him, Mallard, Waring, Beamish, Button.
All of these cases have a recurring theme of questionable police conduct. There does not appear to have been, in my view at least, proper inquiries into whatever culture might exist within pockets of the West Australian Police Department to explain the way in which these miscarriages have occurred.
I expect there will be further inquiries in relation to this matter. Clearly it's a very, very serious matter. It may involve the CCC.
The people of Australia want to know that the police are doing their job properly and the justice system is fair. When there are inferences drawn that something may have gone wrong or there was some tampering or some possible corruption, then I think authorities like the Corruption and Crime Commission should step in and conduct an investigation to provide clarity on exactly what happened so we can preserve confidence in our justice system.
What we've had is forensics for the prosecution, forensics for the defence, but it's very clear that we need independent forensics to come to an independent conclusion about the evidence. We've collected more than 3,000 signatures for a petition for justice for Stacey. We will take this case to the United Nations treaty bodies if we have to. It's really clear that Stacey's life, the lives of Aboriginal women in this country, are simply not valued.
The night when my sister was murdered, she came out of the flat with all the stab wounds, and she made it down to where we're going now. She was very a strong lady to get how far she got. The police, they made it a cold case, and that's what we don't want. We want them to reopen the case and do their job. Find out who did it. So she got down to this yard here, where her final steps. The lady that helped her, or tried to help her, see what's going on. Stacey died in her arms.
I don't understand why the police aren't offering a reward for new information, for people to come forward. That fresh, compelling information or evidence is all it would take to get this case reopened.
I just can't believe she walked that far on her own.
The police should re-investigate to find out who did kill Stacey. Like, something has to be done, like to help them now. It should be re-investigated to give them peace of mind as well. There is a killer still out there somewhere.
This case should be opened. The police should investigate those other suspects that were not only nominated by defence but were potentially available on the evidence that they received back in 2007.
In the second trial, we mounted an argument to the jury that there was at least a potential alternative killer who had had a long and bitter feud with the deceased Stacey Thorne. That person lied about their movements that night, particularly at the time of the alleged killing. And importantly, that person was in and around the scene and that location at about the time of the alleged killing.
There had been some history of altercations in the past. This person was very vague with their whereabouts on that particular evening and were actually found to be lying about their whereabouts on that particular evening and have changed their story on a number of occasions. We actually need to consider them in the overall picture.
School, not much of school left, eh?
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Well, evidence tampering destroys everyone's faith in the justice system. The consequences of that is somebody spends a long time in prison and a lot of their life is lost. Of course, it also has a very significant impact on the families of victims because they don't get closure, and that, of course, has lifelong consequences for them.
So, Dad, when are you quitting smoking?
Soon.
Good. I will never get those years back with my dad. He missed, birthdays, teenage years, me getting my licence, just everything that a dad wants to be there for.
You could be a YouTuber, Dad.
No.
You should be a motivational speaker.
Spending time with my daughters now has been awesome.
Just ask me a question and I'll give you a 10-word answer.
They've grown up and they've both grown up to be good girls. It's amazing to have family time again.
Should have brought the Barbie.
To the Thorne family, I'd just like to say sorry to hear about what has happened to Stacey, and I would like you to know that it was not me.
Dearly loved daughter of David and Susan, love sister of Hayley, Brenda.
He can walk around and do what he wants now. Where does it leave my sister? She's out there at the cemetery. When we want to go and see her, we've got to go out there.
This year will be a big year for her. She'll be 50. So we'll have to come out here and have a barbecue.
And we just can't understand how it got to this stage. We thought she can rest in peace, but at the moment she's not. She's
not resting.
She's not resting.
Years going fast, but in our hearts, it's just like it seems yesterday.